Hello and welcome to Half Moon, a creative exploration of healing and human consciousness. And today I have the absolute honor and pleasure of interviewing one of my closest friends, Alekha Akkapeddi. Hey, Alekha.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so happy that you're here. So Alekha and I met in February, right?
Yeah, which is insane because it feels like so much has passed and changed since then.
Yeah, we've gone through lifetimes and we've
Yeah.
probably known each other for lifetimes.
Yeah.
Have we talked about that?
Literally, yeah.
So Alekha and I met at this event that we hosted through the Naturopathic Medical Student Association, or let me be clear, Alekha's not a naturopathic.
I'm not in naturopathic school. I was just there. I was just there for the vibes.
So I was trying to transition out of school like I talked about in previous episodes, but I was still fulfilling my duties because I was chapter president at the Naturopathic Medical Student Association, and we were hosting an amazing naturopathic doctor that you might be familiar with, which is Dr. Paul Anderson. And at the end of his lecture, the last question of the night was this woman. And I was like, it was one of the most profoundly interesting questions. And it was also something that was so close to my heart because it's one of the major focuses of my work as an independent healing practitioner. And I was like, who is she?
So that was the most complex question. I feel like everyone was ready to go home. And I was like, by the way, what do you think of pentad super syndrome? But yeah, that was so great. And Dr. Anderson, shout out. He's one of the most smartest people I've ever heard talk in my life. And Dr. Anderson is one of the smartest, most knowledgeable people, truly a practitioner that can critically think and uncode. And if he doesn't have an answer, he's like, okay, I'm going to find the answer to this.
Yeah. And
So
he
that was
explains
amazing.
things so well.
Yeah.
And then Alekha's question, I was like, because I was like, she has to be at least a fourth year naturopathic medical student, or is she a doctor? Like, who is this girl? So I actually was like,
Just an elusive identity altogether. I was just there. I was like, no one knows who I am or what I do.
Yeah. I was like, never seen her before, but how did I miss someone like this? And I waited. She asked Dr. Anderson a question after. Do you remember that?
Oh my God, yes. Oh, I literally asked him about what he thinks about red light therapy and the different energetic therapies and as a intervention for POTS and MCAS.
Yeah. And then I was lingering off to the side, trying to introduce myself to you and ask who you were.
Yeah.
And then one thing led to another and
next thing we're on Nectarine Grove. We both have our notebooks out. We're channeling fourth and fifth dimensional consciousness.
Literally, that's right. Because we said we were just going to get coffee. And then Alekha starts talking and I'm like, wait, let me get my notebook out.
You remember that? You're like, I get my notebook. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. While we're here.
Yeah. And then, I don't know, we kept kind of going into this channel together. And that's what I feel like we're going to do here, right?
Yeah. I feel like whenever we get together and we always talk about this, our weeks will pass by and we'll both have our experiences and we do similar-ish things, but presenting in totally different ways. And then we come back together when we meet and we're it just comes together and we put together all the pieces from our own work and we put them together in this way and we're wow.
Yeah. And it's almost overloading to our nervous system sometimes.
Yeah, I know.
Sometimes we're just kind of goofing around too, which is
well, that's most of the time.
Yeah. But then we get super serious.
Yeah, we're oh, well, what about this really niche topic that we got a dream about yesterday?
Oh my God, we're solving complex chronic disease.
I remember when we used to meet when you were in Bali.
Yeah.
Once a week via Zoom.
Oh, yeah.
And we I feel we didn't really know each other that well at that point. But when we came together and met, we would just have these crazy conversations.
Yeah.
And I feel uncode levels of my psyche that I never even thought. I don't know, when we get together, it's this thing just comes through.
Yeah. I totally agree.
Yeah.
And then I was telling you things that nobody in my life
knew. Same.
So I'm literally so thankful.
Yeah.
So can you tell everyone about your work, the premise of it?
Yeah, of course. So I want to say in June or July, officially launched the ALI protocol, which is a 12 to 16 week framework and healing modal for complex chronic illnesses like POTS, MCAS, chronic fatigue, chronic Lyme, long COVID, and really is different than many functional medicine or integrative protocols out there because I'm looking at the resonance of your body and really trying to change the resonance so that your body can actually expel these toxins and these pathogens and come back to health by changing the biofield. And so how do I do that? I first start with physical scaffolding. I start with circadian rhythms. That is first and foremost so important. Hydration, mineralization, and then eventually we go into magnetism with subconscious reprogramming, somatic processing, brain retraining, and eventually, and I don't like using this word, but quantum healing, where I'm connecting us to the everything, the quantum, the everything that's in you, me, the sun, the moon, the grass, like the food we're eating. So yeah, that is my current offering right now. And I do see some people one-on-one who are a little bit more complex. And yeah, that is right now. I'm trying to think if I forgot anything, but that's how we connected because I remember before I had launched it, or I was just in the beginning phases of launching it. This is a very experimental field.
Yeah.
This is, no one's really talking about subconscious reprogramming and the quantum in this way to address this subset of illnesses.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we connected because I remember talking to you about this and you were like, not only do I agree with it, but this is also the model I'm primarily using in my work.
It was so cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just to be clear, it's definitely very different. I think Alekha and I are approaching it from different angles, but we're coming to the same truth. Doesn't it feel like
right.
we're like two pieces of a puzzle that's probably a million pieces big?
10,000%. And I think the overarching thing in that truth is like, in the Western and even in functional spaces, there's really much this notion that the healer is outside of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that healing obviously can be approached in many different ways. And doctors and practitioners are great because they give you the tools, but it's you that's doing the healing.
Yeah.
And so that's something we're both emphasizing as you're the healer.
Yeah.
Like you're healing.
Right.
And then somebody else is like, giving you the blueprint and the architecture, but you're building the house.
Right. Right. I always talk about that to my clients. It's like my role, I believe, is to connect you to you.
Right.
So it's not like I'm here and I'm telling you what's right and your body doesn't know what's right. It's actually like facilitating your connection with your body, which then we talk about then the subtle bodies,
the energy bodies. Yeah. And I think also that distinguishes us from a lot of other people in this world because when you are looking at the body from the energy and the subtle realms, you're not seeing illness as this kind of like random thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're seeing it as this energetic mismatch.
Ooh.
And I feel like both of us try to at least, get to, if not the root, just the right direction of why this energetic mismatch is even happening.
Yeah, exactly.
And two different approaches, but ultimately, like you said, same truth and same outcome.
Right. And okay, I feel like we need to get one thing straight when we're talking about this kind of stuff because me and Alekha talk all the time about this like new age spiritual.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. I don't know how long we have this podcast, but I could go on this for days, girl.
Yeah. So I think we're pretty much in agreement that a lot of the spiritual teachers that you might see, especially in
I'm like having a visceral reaction. Yeah, sorry.
are legitimately the worst people you've ever met.
Girl, I know. It's like, and I don't want to like, turn this into like a negative thing, but I think it's really important to put that awareness out there of like, but it's back to this whole thing of looking for the healer outside of yourself. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these quote unquote spiritual teachers, and I use that very loosely because I've met a lot of them, just a disclaimer, and they're the furthest thing from spiritual. Whatever the antithesis of spiritual, that's them. But, when you're really talking about healing and it's really inside yourself and these people, I think just a rule of thumb, if someone is saying these buzzwords of I have the key to healing or I have the answer to healing, generally disclaimer, they don't.
Mm-hmm.
because healing is so complex and multifaceted. And even like the yogis that are in the Himalayas, they're doing hours and hours and hours of meditation a day to, get the like lifetimes of karma and samsaras that they're working through.
Yeah.
And someone's telling you, oh, buy my course in 6 weeks, you can reach enlightenment or like freedom. Got some bad news.
Got some bad news for
Yeah.
you. Sorry if you're one of those people.
Yeah, sorry.
That fell for it. No, I'm just kidding.
If you're one of those people that's listening to, because I understand when you first get into this space, I think a lot of people go in with the right intention. Something worked for them and there was a tool that worked for them or whatever it was. And you want to share that, right? And you want to help people. But there's a lot of humility, I think, and like a lot of reflection that it takes to be like, hey, I'm not qualified to speak on this and I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
And I'm taking this from a space that a realm that I don't even really know much about.
Yeah.
Like, I only know this very diluted, like almost, kind of broken down, whatever, tangled up version of what it is. So who am I to be giving this to other people when I don't know what the full depth of the practice is?
Right. And this is something that Alekha and I talk about in our work. And of course, no one's perfect, right? We're humans, but we both always articulate the fact that our work, like we said at the beginning, is grounded in you connecting with you.
Right.
That your role is to offer a mirror. And yes, while we have these frameworks and ideologies, it's more like taking the ego out of it.
Right.
It's not like, oh, I'm this divine guru that has the answers.
I'm this fifth-dimensional, light-working alien.
Yeah, contacting the extra-dimensional Arcturian.
I know. And I think it's really, especially on this day of Instagram and the internet, I mean, do you have any tips to like kind of weed that out? Because now every time I open my phone, it feels like, I go on the like the Instagram Explorer and it's like some new person. And like, how, in your opinion, in your words, have you been able to like kind of like weed, like what's something that resonates with you when you see that where you're like, oh, this might not be?
I think what is clear to me, I think it's because I live in Southern California. I was in LA and then now we're both in San Diego, but like there's a huge spiritual, in quotation marks, community.
Yeah.
And like I know them in real life. You know what I mean?
Right.
So now it's like you can clock it because you're like people walking around with literal crystal wands and staffs, and then you see them on the internet and you're like, oh, like this is interesting. Like, sure, you have this hood on and this cape and like or like maybe you don't, you just have your tie-dye and your robes. I don't know. You know what I mean? I think for me, I'm actually looking for like, are people like playing into this like in quotes spiritual picture? Like, you know what I mean? Like whenever I see somebody that's like, oh, they're wearing like, I don't mean for this to sound judgmental too. Right. Yeah. But I'm just kind of saying like, if it feels energetically like you're trying to look apart.
That's what it is.
Right? Yeah. Rather than being authentically yourself. Yeah. And honestly, if I'm being so real, like I actually don't listen to any spiritual online teachers except for you, if you got yourself.
And I'm first one to say I'm not a spiritual by any means. Like I really am not.
And then like my legitimate close friends, my teachers, my books, I look for books that are from like the 1800s or 1900s or earlier. Like not 1900s, that's like 20 years ago.
Like that's literally 2 weeks ago. And I think you touch on a good point of like, it's like about the image of it. Like, are they trying to like curate this like almost like they want you to believe that it's some way, but then when you click on it, you almost have this intuition or this gut feeling of like, hey, like it's almost also the way they talk too. It's very much in this coded languaging of like,
oh yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't want to call out certain words, but like there's certain phrases that like, I feel like they use that you could tell they're just doing it almost to like appear a certain way. And it's not actually what they mean to say. And I think also too, a lot of it, and I think we need to really talk about this, is like when it's very much healing is only love and light.
Oh, that's a good point too. That's a really good point. Oh my gosh. Okay, wait, let's talk about that because there's a huge rhetoric that's like basically, like we said, like the worst people I ever met, where it's like they will say, like, oh, basically, if you're holding me accountable for anything, like,
Right.
you're just not ascended.
No, literally. Like, why is that so true? It's like, I actually, I'm like getting chills. I feel like that's been said to me before.
No, literally. There are like
Yeah.
groups in San Diego where it's like they all do a bunch of drugs and then they
Right.
all like sleep with each other.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, God forbid you like call it out. It's like, oh, that's not like you're low vibrational. That's
Right.
another one they love to pull out of like, if you're having any kind of hardship or like sadness or like anger that you're working through,
Yeah.
it's like you're a low vibrational person.
Right. And also, like, just to be clear, you know, like I'm not opposed to like all of the things they do, right?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
Like I think that like certain drugs and psychedelics can be tools for people to expand.
100%.
But I think where it feels wrong to me is then when people are addicted to expansion and they don't allow their consciousness to oscillate.
Yes.
Or when you're dependent on a tool. Or when you're appropriating that tool from the culture it came from.
100,000%. And like, especially with, it becomes almost a form of like spiritual escapism.
Yeah.
Of like, they are just almost, or like, you know, some people, and I've honestly found myself in this too. So I'm going to clock myself really quick. When I was like in the beginning of my spiritual journey, I only wanted to do things that almost, what's the word? Validated my ego.
Yeah.
And so like I would only do certain practices that would quote unquote make me feel good and then not look at the other stuff that like maybe like a shadow or things that I didn't want to integrate. And that almost became addictive because it was like, okay, I would do those practices and only surround myself with like one type of person almost. And anybody that was like not that. So I understand the appeal of it. And it's very salacious to like try to, you know, keep going and keep getting like, oh, I want to feel good all the time. But I think it's a forewarning of a lot of this journey is not all love and light.
Yeah.
In fact, most of it isn't.
Right.
Because, you know, you are light and you are love. But I mean, at the end of the day, we're human beings.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of shit.
Right.
And we're very fickle. And so like, so like I feel like, you know, to kind of undo that.
Sorry, I'm laughing because I remember the other day you said something to me. You're like, "Girl, how many more sound baths?"
Like, cause it's like it gets to a point. You're like, how many more sound baths and meditations and like yoga classes do I gotta do? No, but it's like the journey is constant. It's funny because I was having a talk with my mentor and I was like, oh, okay, like once I do like this tool, then like I'll be good, right? He's like, ha ha ha. Like, no, like it's like you just, you create more space, but like the work is constant, you know, you're constantly. And so back to what we were talking about, anyone who claims to have it all figured out and they're 100% healed and they're enlightened and they're free. Bit of a disclaimer, they're probably not. Sorry.
Sorry, but actually, on Earth, there is no arriving.
Yeah.
And that's, I believe, why we incarnated, partially, is to have this experience of duality.
Totally.
Like, you're not here to leave the body.
No.
Until you die.
Yeah. That's a really good point too. A lot of it is like escaping into the macrocosm. People are constantly trying to figure out the secrets of the universe and why this is all like, but no one's really looking at the microcosm.
Yeah.
And so I think that switch of like, you know, shifting it from looking at the macrocosm and coming back into the microcosm of, yes, all of this stuff obviously exists and it's real. And, you know, there is this higher dimension and these higher states of consciousness, but in your day-to-day life, how are you actually living? And a perfect example of that, I always like to say, is like these people that are like, oh, I'm free and I'm enlightened. The second they're at like the DMV or the post office, they're telling off the person, you know?
Yeah.
So it's,
I'll never forget this one time I was with someone that was like a spiritual teacher on the internet, like pretty well known. And I'm going to not gender them so that no one can figure it out. But basically they like asked for like 12 modifications in their food. Oh my God. And then ate half of it. And then after eating half, sent it back.
Are you kidding?
Yeah. Oh, no.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that's just an example of like kind of how we see this degradation of just like being a person and fitting into society in a certain way. Whereas like I feel like the way that, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that we're approaching this is more so like we want to be grounded in reality on Earth, and we joke about being delusional. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because we do like to go out there.
Yeah.
But it's like we want to be grounded. And also, both Alekha and I love science. And
I think that's what it is. Yeah.
literally has her master's from Columbia.
Oh,
Yeah, go on.
no, I know. I like, but I think that's what it is too. Like and to talk about our work too. Another distinguishing factor is like, yeah, we talk a lot about the subtle realms and the higher states of consciousness, but both of us since day one always try to integrate it in scientific language if we can. And I remember one of our first talks when we were talking about non-local consciousness, for example.
Yeah.
We were talking about specifically like
whoa,
like psychoneuroimmunology and minerals. I remember us talking about, okay, how does this non-local consciousness and consciousness in general fit into our lens of how we know the nervous system and the immune system and minerals work?
Yeah. Yeah. And then how can we actually, translate that into human biology?
100%.
Because we believe that science is this shared language, right?
Yeah.
And that it's not like, I think a lot of people think that they're being open-minded, but they're actually accepting the dogma because there's dogma in religion, there's dogma in spirituality, culturally, materialism, right? And instead we have right now in science a very materialistic framework that's not really open to consciousness. And then people who are spiritual in quotes reject the idea of science, where I feel like what we're trying to do is then use it. And we're saying like, oh, there's not science yet, or we're not sure what we're measuring.
But that doesn't mean that it's not out there. And actually, the more spiritual, quote unquote, or like the more your consciousness expands, you can see the aliveness and the consciousness in science. And it makes you even more like adept to understanding that science is like an awakening in a sense. Because when you look at all of these mechanisms, you're like, oh, all of this is being divinely orchestrated by this thing, you know, by this higher consciousness, by God, whatever universe you want to call it. And it becomes a much more like beautiful journey too of everything in science and in the human body, discovered or not, is all God.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I kind of want to transition us into you, if you're open to it, sharing your personal healing journey.
Oh my God. Again, how much time do we got? I'm still on it.
Let's get the backstory.
So let's backtrack a little bit. Started when I was born. No, I'm kidding.
Real. Actually, it started when I was a blastocyst.
When a blastocyst. But yeah, I guess my like foremost healing journey started. I was in college and I went to Greece and I kind of got like a mysterious infection. It was like a sinus infection, and I came home and I took an antibiotic and I lost my ability to swallow. And I lost 50 pounds in the span of a month. Long story short.
Wait, so sorry, you got, what did you get that?
They don't know.
Okay.
Like it was just like a mysterious infectious disease. Patient zero of COVID, maybe. I don't know.
Whoa.
Yeah. I have no idea what it was. But so I lost 50 pounds in the span of literally a month and got all of these like diagnoses. Like, well, first of all, backtrack. It took me probably a year to get any sort of diagnosis. And if you're listening to this and you do have complex chronic illness or you're going through this process right now, I just want to validate your experience, because going through the system sometimes it takes a while to get diagnosed with these. And so back in 2018, especially, these were very like vague. No one really understood them as much. And now after COVID, they're a lot more like elucidated, it feels. But I got these diagnoses of POTS, mast cell, mixed connective tissue disorder. But I was so sick. I couldn't leave my bed. All my electrolytes dropped. I was going to end up on a feeding tube because I still couldn't eat. And I was only 22. So I was like, what the hell? And I really didn't try. So actually, that's a lie. I tried some medications. I was getting worse. And then I had a functional medicine family friend out of nowhere kind of be like, try this Vedic mantra. And I was like, not really religious. You know, I grew up Hindu, but didn't really do much of that. And she was like, just try chanting this and see what happens. So I chanted it pretty religiously every day for like 3 months. Didn't do anything else. Maybe like, I got better sleep and some other things, but in general, not really any supplements. And I started to get better. But not only did I start to get physically better, I started to almost have this really deep consciousness awakening, spiritual awakening. And at this time, I was planning to go to medical school. So I really didn't know how to unite the two of like, okay, I'm having this crazy spiritual awakening. This is working. The medical system, the Mayo Clinic, all these other things really aren't working. Sorry to call them out, but they weren't working. Like, how is this consciousness-based practice working? Like, scientifically, it doesn't make any sense. I'm not doing anything else. And then I proceeded to go to Columbia, get my master's, still wanted to go to medical school, but started to see like the importance of like circadian rhythms on health. And then I went to do some consulting and work with like the gut microbiome and biological age. But I was still doing this practice that was having really the most profound results. So I started to think, what do circadian rhythms, the gut microbiome, and my spiritual practice all have in common? It was the realm of quantum biology.
Hmm.
And so what I realized was that I was looking at healing in this very linear way.
Hmm.
And once I found quantum biology, that ultimately helped me make this protocol, I was like, okay, healing and science is actually nonlinear because we're not looking at this from this Newtonian biochemical model. We're actually looking at it from the lens of quantum physics and quantum biology. And so there's a lot more to explore here. So I started to employ other practices in quantum biology, the three tenets being light, hydration, and magnetism, and really use that as like the bread and butter for healing. And that's where I found biofield science and bioenergetics, and then biochemical things kind of follow after that.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
So your perspective, let me make sure I'm understanding it. You were raised Hindu, but you weren't religious. And
Yeah.
you said you really did you not really have a spiritual life or spiritual
No,
practice?
I always knew there was something outside of me, God. And like, I always knew that like, now I realize it was the great illusion, Maya. Like, I always thought like things weren't real, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what I knew to be real, like, was only temporary.
Like the physical reality was temporary?
Physical reality was temporary.
So you knew that,
Yeah.
but you didn't have any like practices?
No, definitely not.
Okay. So then you're doing these chants and like,
Yeah.
what does that look like in practice?
So it's more than just the chants. In Hindu and Vedic practices, yogic practices, mantra is more than just a sound and a cosmic vibration, which it is, but it's more than that. It's also the sonic form of the deity.
Well,
So you're connecting to the deity through this sound. And the deities, the oneness, it lives in all of us in these different vibrations. So when you're chanting this mantra, you're essentially, it's like, think about it, you're in the car and there's a bunch of different radio stations. You're tuning yourself to a specific radio station. So in this case, I did one, to the deity that was for health. And I got into this frequency, I guess you could say, and that's very diluted to what it is, but I got into connection with the sonic vibration. And essentially the deity was working through me to heal me.
Wow. And how do you perceive this in relationship with you as an individual consciousness? And then also your space within the larger, like, consciousness as a whole.
Oh, God, that's a loaded question. Okay, so we have God, let's say, God, universe, and that's in everything and everyone and every molecule and every plant and every animal. And then we have our own individual consciousness. We have Kailee, Alekha, all our friends, all our family. And inside all of us is this molecule or this thing that unites all of us, this light, right? And so if you think about it, I guess another way to look at it is you're Kailee, but you're not just a student, you're not just an entrepreneur, you're also a sister, a daughter. So like you have this overarching Kailee, but you have all of these other little like branches or roles.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I feel with like the universal cosmic consciousness and then us. Unfortunately, because we're humans, like I said, and we're fickle and we, have all of our beliefs and biases and things like that, we often disconnect ourselves with this universal cosmic consciousness. And so what the mantra and these spiritual practices and meditation and breath work do is really unwind these beliefs and these things that allow us to access this higher form.
Wow. So kind of circling back to what you were talking about in the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about your perception. Do you believe it is this, you said this deity
Right.
healing, facilitating healing?
Yeah.
Is it through that restoration of that connection to universal consciousness, or how do you perceive that?
Yeah. I mean, I think the deity exists in all of us and whatever we want to call it. In Hinduism, we have a bunch of different names, but in Christianity and Judaism and Islam, there are also other ways to look at this. But there's one, a vibration, I would say, that exists in all of us that when we talk about Jesus, he was the perfect example of that. Like he was in this God consciousness. So essentially the deity is like branches of that kind of unwind to help you get to that God consciousness.
Wow. So beautiful. And then we talk a lot, me and you, on the side about like then that in the context of healing. Because I know that then that, you said, facilitated your journey then in drawing these connections between light, hydration, a magnetism. Can you explain magnetism?
Yeah, so magnetism is really anything that we're talking about with electromagnetism. But to me, it's more than just the electromagnetic spectrum because I think that is one form or one wavelength. But I think, in my opinion, scalar energy is a lot more of what the bread and butter of magnetism is. Because I don't think, and maybe this is like groundbreaking or going to get me canceled, I can't tell which, but we are not purely electromagnetic beings.
Yeah.
I'll even go, on a limb and say we're also scalar beings. So we have electromagnetic energy, but maybe like there's something else going on too.
Yeah, and that gets into a whole deeper conversation, which I didn't know we were going there, which I'm down for.
Yeah.
But like that was actually legitimately the first conversation we had.
Yeah.
Where Alekha was drawing like electromagnetic waves. If you can picture a piece of paper, it's like a sinusoidal wave.
Yeah.
It's up and down. And then scalar waves you depicted as like dashes.
Yeah, like anything that's not these linear waves.
Right. And then I was getting so fixated. This is why I went to my car and got my notebook. Because I was like, how could it be that we would perceive it as dashes? And then that night I had a dream where I saw the reason we perceive them as dashes was because they're propagating interdimensionally outside of space-time.
Wow.
I don't know if you remember us talking about that.
Yeah, I feel like that's crazy. I feel like I forgot about that till right now. Oh my God. Yeah.
True. And I think scalar waves are evidence of us having conscious awareness outside of space-time, which I know I've talked about on this podcast before, but I think we talk about that a lot too. We have our consciousness, our individual consciousness, which is within space-time.
Yeah.
And then we also have versions of our consciousness outside.
100%. And I think, like I said, with the whole model of science right now, we're looking at it in this very linear way. But what we're talking about right now, and we're really early to this conversation, may I add, after talking to even like quantum physicists are not talking about this. We're not looking at this, because I think when we are looking at science in this like nonlinear way and we are looking at things outside of the space-time continuum, like how can we quantify that? Because a lot of it feels like it's, at least with the technology we have now, like maybe you have some takes, like how do we even measure this? Right? Besides just like our intuition and like what we know.
Right. I know there are some physicists that are measuring it and
Yeah.
creating devices that have scalar
Right.
waves.
Yeah.
But it also, like, we talk about too how it's kind of suspicious because it's like, well,
Yeah, I know. I think that's all we'll say on that because
yeah,
I think-
let's just leave it at
let's
that.
just leave it at that. But yeah,
But the point is that there's a lot that influences our field. That's what
there's
you're
a
saying.
lot that influences our field.
So then basically I'm imagining it. So it's like you're in this body.
Yeah.
And then you said there's light, and I'm assuming like you're meaning like connection to the sun, but then
Right.
also like
Biophotons.
biophotons.
Yeah.
If you're unfamiliar listening to this, your cells are producing
Light, which
right.
is insane.
Like that's but then something measurable.
Yeah. Right.
And then hydration.
Yeah.
Can you speak on that?
Hydration, yeah, it's something super fascinating that just came into my orbit probably about a year ago. And I don't claim to be an expert. If you guys want more information about like all of the, different experiments and the data on that, look at Emoto's experiments where he basically puts intentions into water and water will give him a spitting image back. So hydration is really important because we are 70% water, more than that. And I feel that water is its own consciousness or has its own consciousness. There's some like debate about that. And water is also a very important thing because it stores memory too. So in addition to being its own consciousness and storing its own memory, like that to me is like really wow, I think I'm having a breakthrough with this right now in real time. Like, when you think about water and like, it almost feels like this a medium of these other things that, these other inputs that we're putting into our body or into our field that's almost transforming it and like sending signals to the other parts of our body, our cells, our nervous system, our vagus nerve, our brain, where it's like almost this like delivery system or something.
Yeah, I can feel that.
Yeah.
The truth in that. So then it's kind of like understanding the role and the connection between all of these things. And then, so then your biophotons are creating your field.
Right.
But also probably part of your field is just like extra dimensional.
Yeah.
And then it's being influenced by electromagnetic and scalar waves.
Yes.
And that can cause disturbances in the field through your environment.
Right.
Which also then you said, circling back to the beginning, is that before that even happens, disease begins. Did we even say this?
No, I don't think so. But there's an important thing. So before we get physical disease, and I think we really need to emphasize this, like physical disease is not random.
Yeah.
Like physical disease, quote unquote, dis-ease is happening somewhere else in the energetic body or the subtle body before it comes into the physical body.
So what would create the disturbance?
I mean, a bunch of different things. And I think the biggest one, I would say, like I said, is this forgetting that you are one with this universal consciousness. And this is a direction and avenue that I'm actually doing in my work in real time to kind of understand what the role of certain emotions and subconscious belief systems play in the disturbance of this biofield.
Mm-hmm.
Because, there are some experiments that look at this and some data, but I feel like there's more to the story. And it almost feels as though like your emotions and your subconscious beliefs emit something where you can tangibly almost like feel it.
Yeah.
Right? Because like, when you go into a room and you can like almost feel someone's like sadness.
Yeah.
Or feel someone, and they don't even have to open their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Or like they're not crying, but it's like there's something that they're emitting in their field that you're picking up on, that your field's picking up on.
Right.
So I think it's all about like what is breaking down the resonance so you are not in balance with your own unique resonance.
Right. I was telling Alekha on the car ride here, we were talking on the phone.
Yeah.
Getting our yapping out of the way. But this morning I was reading a flower essences book.
Yeah.
And it was saying essentially a very similar thing that we already talk about quite a bit, which is, again, like we said earlier, we're picking up on these core fundamental truths that were puzzle pieces in a bigger puzzle that other practitioners throughout time have picked up on. So in this case, it's saying essentially that you have your personality, which is your earthly form, like Kailee. Then you have your higher self, which facilitates the connection to your soul, which is then connected to the universal oneness of all that is. And then it was saying that, like, when you have the resistance between the personality and the higher self, or the higher self and the soul,
Right.
then that creates the disturbance in the field, which then down the line manifests as physical.
100%. And the way that I see it too is like, it's just, when we talk about these disturbances, quote unquote, I find it to be just almost breakdowns in like the wavelength, if that makes sense. Like when the universal consciousness is like, because in the Vedic system, we have things called the Panchakoshas.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 5 bodies. And before it's your physical body, it's your energy body, it's your wisdom body, it's your universal body. And so essentially consciousness is almost like dialing into these like different bodies and these different fields and before it gets into your physical body. And the way that it's doing that is through frequency.
Whoa.
And so somewhere in this like coming in, the frequency and the waveform gets disrupted. And my 2 cents is the biggest disruptor of this is emotions and subconscious belief systems. But I think that there are other things that come into play. And we were talking, I think a few days ago about like, there's like the top down and then there's the bottom up disturbances, right? And so I think that, did the chicken come first or did the egg? I don't know. But I think some of these like top down disturbances can come from like, the disrupted emotional states and subconscious beliefs, but also things like EMFs, right? Because the EMFs, it's not actually targeting your physical body. It's targeting your field that's trickling into your physical body because that's a frequency.
Right.
So that's another example. Or I don't know, like certain environments too can like disrupt this top down. And then bottom up, that's where I'm not as focused, but like things like toxins and like pathogens and bacteria and viruses and whatever else, diet, lack of whatever, hydration. So I think all of these different things can disturb the fields and this like, this consciousness coming in. But me personally, my personal bias is the biggest almost like conductor of this or the biggest substrate of this is emotions and subconscious beliefs.
I think I have to right now mostly agree. Definitely. But I think where I get stuck, and also I see sometimes with clients get stuck, is like sometimes it's difficult when somebody is in a state of severe sickness to kind of articulate
Right.
where to start.
And I think in that case, like, yeah, and this is really where I feel that my protocol tries to almost like give a basis for that or scaffolding for that, because yes, obviously this is the theory, but like in practice, if you tell someone and if you told me who was like dealing with POTS, who was bedridden, hey, it's your belief systems, would be like, yeah, fuck off. Like get the fuck out of my face. Like obviously like, like there was a real physical layer that I needed to address first before I even got there. And by the way, I'm just tackling the emotions and the subconscious beliefs like 5 years into my journey, right? Like I needed to create safety and physical scaffolding really as like the first step, the first primary step before I even got there. And this is not a coincidence because even in these yogic practices, what do they start with first, right? They start with pranayama, they start with asana, they start with diet before they even go into the higher states of consciousness, because you need to be able to hold this physically first before you're even going there.
Right.
So I think with that, it's like, yeah, obviously people too who I've seen who are chronically ill, a lot of them will tell you like, yeah, I have trauma and I have certain emotional belief systems and certain tendencies, but obviously like I don't feel even safe enough to go there first because I'm dealing with very real symptoms of like not being able to get out of bed in the morning, not, being able to live my life. So I think like physical scaffolding and safety really is like the first step before going into that realm.
I think I do totally agree with that. And that's, I think, how both of our work, if I'm understanding correctly, unless you have news for me, like really does address a lot of the physical elements first. Like you were saying, you're like light, hydration, magnetism. We talk a lot about minerals and then how supplements can be these supportive tools. But Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think we talk about field stabilization. Like,
Yeah.
if you want the healing to stabilize,
Right.
then you have to go into the subconscious.
Because you know what it is? You have to change the resonance.
Yeah.
And this is also something we talk about. Illness or like pathogens and bacterias and viruses and toxins, they all have their own resonance, their own frequency. And they're not infecting people who are not in resonance with that in some way.
Yeah.
And I'm
Unfortunate.
sorry. Like, I wish it was different, guys. Trust me, because I am dealing with my own too right now. Like,
Yeah, and same. Like,
right. Yeah.
so when we're talking about this,
Yeah.
I've had Epstein-Barr, I've had
Yeah.
Lyme, I've had long COVID. Like,
Yeah.
I was in resonance.
I was in resonance with that. And when I think about when I got like the POTS and the mast cell, and they think there was some like, yeah, viral things. Yeah, I was in resonance with the thing that like with number one, the virus, but then also with like the POTS almost, because I was in resonance with my nervous system being so dysregulated.
Right.
And so I think with the field stabilization, it's so important that to get yourself to the resonance where these pathogens and these bacteria don't infect you anymore, you have to work on the emotions.
Yeah.
You have to work on the subconscious.
Yeah. Oh, and then I guess it's like, I'm just thinking recently because I'm like, this is no freaking joke. Like,
Yeah, no, it's not.
it's no joke. And also, like, I think,
Right.
I don't know if I've told it here, but I've definitely told it somewhere on social media of my story of when I did like my own program, the spiral studies on myself. And then I puked for the first time in 16 years, like immediately after. Like it's a physical, visceral purging.
Yes, girl, I know. It's like sick. I was like, yeah, I think like last week I was tuning into, so with biofilm, which is what I'm kind of dealing with right now. There's the emotion that feels very resonant a lot with biofilm is shame. And so especially biofilm, I'm sorry, this is like TMI, but especially biofilms that are in the lady track, I'll say, like it's a lot of it has to do with shame and like fear. And I was like tuning into like shame last week in my body, and I felt like I had the flu.
Yeah.
Like it's so deep.
Yeah, and then it's interesting because like we say again and again, it's connecting back to so many things. Because when you say that, I think about in German new medicine.
Yeah.
Like conditions of the bladder are boundary issues.
Right. Yeah.
And then like if something is like on the skin, it's usually a separation or abandonment issue. Like
that's super interesting.
It's really fascinating.
And German new medicine, I feel like, is the best almost framework to look at this.
Yeah, it's a good starting point. I
totally
think.
Yeah. And at least in like the like a medical clinical way.
Yeah. I kind of want to talk too about like perspectives of healing as a whole though, because I also think like we said at the beginning about consciousness, there's no arrival. Like
no. Yeah.
And also almost like this interesting, you hit this interesting point in your healing journey where you're like, wait, I kind of almost remember that like I came to Earth to experience like how to go out of this.
That's literally in my like protocol brochure that I made last week. The tagline was illness is the path to awakening.
Wow.
And that, what I also really want to emphasize too, there is not one point of my healing journey. Yes, of course, I was in the trenches and I love to like, you know, sometimes be in this victim mentality, but I am so grateful for every part of this healing journey.
Right.
Because the more that I can go in and look at myself and look at where I really am and who I really am, it's like I almost develop more of this intimacy with myself that I ever have before. And when I think about when I first got sick to now, of the transformation and like the emotional body and the subconscious body and this vulnerability and this even divinity is this overarching thing that I've cultivated in myself, I wouldn't trade it in a minute for anything.
I think about it because, I have been very immersed in Christianity after I converted myself at
Yeah.
16. And I still resonate with Christ, but not with that religion. But specifically, there's a verse in the Bible that talks about Paul saying that he has a thorn in his flesh and
Mhm.
that he's almost like he's asked for it to be taken away, but it actually puts him into a state of dependence on God. And I,
Wow. Ooh, I just got chills. Chills. Oh my God. Ooh. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry because that's really crazy you said that because this week I specifically have been going deeper and deeper into my emotional healing. And before I started to do this, I had a lot of fear and resistance of like, okay, the ego obviously wants to resist this type of deep work. But I was thinking, not that my faith was ever like gone, but I was sometimes it wavers, that's just like the
mhm,
nature of human experience. But I have felt more connected to the divine mother. That's what I use, the archetype I use ever in my whole life. Like as I go deeper and deeper into these emotional layers, I'm like, I have more and more faith that this is all like I said, more and more divine.
mhm.
And I honestly, I was crying out yesterday, might sound silly, in faith of just all of this is all of this is not a mistake. And all of this is so perfectly divinely orchestrated. Even if my brain doesn't want to think so, my limited understanding of what the world is wants to, make all these things and all these conditions. But the truth of the matter is all of this is so perfectly divinely orchestrated.
Yes. Yeah, I feel that. And it can be so difficult to say to people that are
I know.
suffering.
I know.
So this isn't
I know. Right.
invalidating. Like,
Yeah.
I know both of us have been in places where it's like, if
Yeah.
you
No.
were to tell me that, I'd be like,
Girl, if you told me this 2 months ago, get out of my face. But truly, I was like, okay, if this is all so divinely orchestrated and I'm doing all the right things and I'm like, whatever, why am I still suffering?
yeah,
Why am I still in pain?
yeah,
And I think it's about, and again, not to invalidate, but changing the perspective of what pain is. I remember when I was in middle school, I first heard this quote that changed my life that was, pain is mandatory, but suffering is optional.
whoa, wow. I really do believe that. And I used to always say pain is the greatest teacher.
Yeah.
But now, honestly, at this point in my journey, I'm like, it's actually not the greatest teacher. It's a good teacher.
Sure.
But I think the greatest teacher would probably be love, not to get too hippie.
Yeah, right. And I think yeah, just understanding that, and I think it's hard. This is a whole other topic that I won't dive too much into right now, but looking at things in this dualistic way that I think most of us are conditioned to see things as good and bad, evil versus,
Yeah.
pure or whatever, that pain and love are so separate from each other. But they're actually two sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the Vedic philosophy and the yogic philosophy really emphasizes that pain and love are two sides, yeah, of the same unifying force.
Wow. I see that too. I see that pain can only exist because of love underneath it.
Right,
Without something to love, there would be no pain, there would be no grief.
right.
There would be no contrast.
Yeah,
And also, I think because the opposite isn't necessarily true.
right,
You can love without the experience of pain,
right.
but you can't experience pain without the experience
Experience
of
of
love.
love.
Yeah.
And I think we need to touch on point two of this is not to when you're telling someone who's suffering this, they're literally get out of my face. I think it's really hard to see sometimes. And I think for me in my own personal experience, just cultivating a level of almost safety in all of it, you know, even in the pain of just almost being like, this is temporary and you're okay.
Yeah. What is that you say? This is uncomfortable,
Yeah,
but
I was
not
like,
unsafe.
this is uncomfortable, but it's not unsafe. And I think that has been the biggest reframe for me going through life of like, I'm dealing with a lot of fucking discomfort in life, but it's not unsafe. It's unfamiliar for sure. And it can be treacherous at times, more often than not, in fact, but it's not, but it's not unsafe.
It's not unsafe. And I think the reason we associate pain with unsafety, going back to subconscious belief systems, is because most of us who suffer from any sort of complex chronic condition had some legitimate unsafety in childhood.
Yes.
That we were actually unsafe, right?
Where we were fearing, where fear obviously was at the forefront, but it was fear for survival, like a very primal fear of survival. And as someone who has worked extensively through this, reminding myself that the lion's not chasing me anymore. And I don't have to be in the same survival when the threat's not there. And when I think a lot of complex chronic illness arises when the system doesn't turn off even when the threat's not there.
And I want to validate that because in so many of my clients, it's like legitimate threats, right?
Yeah,
and like they tell me their background and it's like thing after thing after thing.
Yeah.
Where they were, right, powerless.
Yeah.
Children experiencing abuse or neglect or usually both. And then now, for the first time in their adult life, their body is experiencing that final repercussion. Like the experiences of life then created this disturbance in the field, which then now is manifesting physically as this final red flag. And that brings us to the point we talk about where then histamine and illness is that path back to awakening and this path back to God. It's the body's final flag. And it's like, okay, now my body will not, it actually physically cannot keep going forward unless I address the deep field disturbance that I'm carrying that's in my subconscious beliefs. And now it's like we say histamine as one example as this boundary setting. It's like dysregulated because it was so suppressed. And now it's like, thank God for these symptoms.
It thaws out, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, now I can actually be expressed.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's brutal to experience, right?
Yeah.
But actually, it was more brutal to experience what you were experiencing before.
Yeah.
And your body is not only, now it's manifesting what you experienced, but through physical symptoms.
Right.
So that your conscious mind cannot deny it anymore.
Right. And it almost, like, I always say that too, of like, it becomes like a blessing because you were in the freezer for so long. You're like a chicken in the freezer and you're so numb and you're so disconnected and you're so frozen. And your body and your consciousness gets to a point of like, hey, like, I don't want to be frozen anymore. I actually want to feel. And then the floodgates open.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's like you're starting to thaw out and all of these things that came with that are starting to come to the surface. And then histamine's being released, cortisol's being released, norepinephrine's being released. Then it's leading to these downstream effects. And then it's like, okay, you're feeling like, oh, okay, the histamine's being released and the cortisol's being released. I'm unsafe again. And so it becomes sometimes this like cycle of like unsafety, even when that threat's not there. And yeah, I just want to validate. And also, if anyone's going through this, I tell my clients this, just know back to this, that it's uncomfortable, but it's not unsafe.
It's uncomfortable, but it's not unsafe. And it's like getting to that point where you can recognize now the physical manifestation of what you've experienced as the path to resolution of it. And it's resolution that's deep and complete and total.
Yeah.
While also embracing that there is no arrival. And I don't know. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. That's a really like point to emphasize that there is no arrival. And I always say this too of like, we have to be careful with with this word healed,
Mhm.
because I think symptoms can go into remission and some may see that as healed, but there's always the journey, right? And there's always a part that needs to be healed or tended to or brought back into wholeness. Because that's really what I see as healed is like you're just remembering and you're just reclaiming this remembrance.
Yeah. And then it's like I'm visualizing it now with those layers of the bodies you were saying, where it's like
Yeah.
your role then is to just continue to embody coherence, or in
Right.
different language, continue to embody the guidance of your soul through your higher self
Yes.
in physical form,
Exactly.
which requires submitting the will of your mind
Right.
and the will of your personality to the will of God in the
100%.
which circles back to what you said at the beginning of your healing journey of mantras and like
Yes,
maintaining.
exactly. And that's exactly what I was going to say of like you said, what does the mantra do? What is the power of the mantra? It brings you back to that coherence. Like it untangles and unwinds all of these mangled loops so that it's one straight line,
Wow.
one straight antenna up through the source.
Wow. And maybe that's a perfect place to close because healing isn't a line.
Healing is not a line.
And we're circling back to the beginning point,
Yes.
right? The beginning
Wow.
of your
Yeah.
journey. But is there anything else that you feel like is on your heart that you want to share?
Ah. I feel like, honestly, this is like the perfect place. I'm like, when we first started talking about this podcast, I was like, oh, I'm going to talk about this, this, and this. But it feels like this was the message that like was coming through at this time. Essentially what this is I was surrendering to this higher consciousness to see what actually was coming through, what wanted to come through. And I think I want to just make the point of, and really like drill that in, that healing is not linear. And science and biology and illness and consciousness is also not linear,
Yeah.
right? It's completely not linear, however we want to quantify that with our brains. And, you know, you have the spiral studies, so you are very familiar with this nonlinearity. And how I see it is just like sometimes when you feel like you're back to square one, quote unquote, of, oh, I got past this trigger. I thought I did this thing. It's actually just an invitation to go even deeper.
So good. If people want to connect with you or work with you, where can they find you?
Yeah. So my website, if they go to my website and they click like start here, that's a way to work with me and to find more about the protocol and my framework. Again, on my website, if they click protocol, there's a huge like video and, page where they can learn more about that. And Instagram.
I'll put your Instagram and website.
It's a work in progress, guys.
I
But
love
yeah.
it. I love her Instagram. I always joke, I'm like, I'm gonna like almost be sad when you blow up because
Stop.
right now you're
Yeah,
so niche.
I know I'm so unbelievably niche, but yeah, it's like a niche, offering a niche topic, a niche.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really want to just express some gratitude to you. Thank you so much for having me on here. And I'm so glad that we met. And seriously, we're literally soul sisters.
We are. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah,
it was
of
so
course.
profound as
I know.
as I expected.
I know. Yeah.
Aw.
Aw,
But I'm sure you'll be back soon.
I will.
There you have it, our first guest, Alekha. If you're interested in learning more about what she does or potentially working with her, I put her website in the show notes and I'm also adding her Instagram right now. I will say she posts a lot of really good stories. I learned so much from her stories, so I definitely recommend following her on there if it resonates. And what else do I have to say? I think that's it. I think I'm feeling kind of weird right now because I'm all alone. My neighbors are all out of town and I'm just like out here in the wilderness, but it's all good. I'm going to leave you with a few car thoughts that I remembered to record this week. Other than that, I will see you next Monday. Okay, car thoughts. I'm back. What I'm thinking about right now is I just got off the phone with one of my besties, Alekha. Wait, this actually might be. No, I think that this is going to be at the end of an episode. before Alekha's on the show, but she's coming soon. Anyway, we were talking about her recent blood work, and we like to just do that with each other. We like to say, like, okay, what are your thoughts on this, this, and this? And we started talking about my theory on minerals. And I was thinking about like how I perceive minerals energetically is very like in a lot of polarity. Like there's a lot of minerals that are very masculine energetically to me and very feminine energetically. And it's funny because I was laughing with her and I was like, oh, my esoteric bullshit. She was like, you need to make a post on that. And I was thinking about one of my videos from January of 2025 was just randomly getting a lot of views. And I was watching it and I was seeing how I would just talk about this esoteric bullshit in my humble terms with such confidence and ease, even though like I'm basically just saying what I'm thinking. Like I'm not, some of it is like very, I like to say like anchored in metaphor, but a lot of it is just what I intuitively feel and deduce that's not really scientifically proven yet. And I was thinking about that. And I was thinking about where the line really is when we're exploring ideas, because now as I've grown a little bit, I'm more hesitant to post these ideas and concepts when they're not really grounded in anything. But I know that you guys say to me that you like how I kind of try to like explain things in a grounded way, even if they're a little esoteric. So anyway, you might hear me talk about that soon. I really feel more comfortable talking about that stuff on this podcast because I don't know, there's something about TikTok and like showing your face and like being perceived and like hitting the wrong side of the algorithm, and I have just been seeing that happen to a lot of people lately. Luckily, it hasn't happened to me yet, but it probably will. You know, I feel like it's just the nature of the game. So that's just my car thoughts for today. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and hopefully I talk to you next Monday.